Welcome everyone, Dr. Templar here, and it's time for Gnosis. Well, I want to cover an interesting person in the alternative science, the technically success science area, because success science is about studying everything that is non-traditional, because the traditional stuff is worthless. So it is very interesting to look into. Are there private people that are doing anything out there? One of them is a Mr. Robert Bigelow. Robert Thomas Bigelow. Some people have stated incorrectly over the years that he was part of the Bigelow tea fortune. Well, I don't find any of that, and I'm not really sure it matters one way or another, and I'm not going to spend huge amounts of time figuring out that. But basically, using the classical disinformation but kinda correct Trashopedia, Seweropedia, which we can assume has got some basic information. I mean, they're not going to tell you wrong birth dates, age, and other things. We hope not. At least they'll be in ballpark figures. But he made his money. He's a Las Vegas or Nevada citizen. He grew up there, spent all of his time there, and has all of his facilities out of there, which is typical. Where you grow up is generally where people stay. Why, I don't know, but he made his money in real estate, building over 25,000 units, whatever all that means. And then he was able to amass all this real estate during times which were relatively boom, and then when the market went bust, conveniently, he sold, making a fortune from all of the inflated real estate prices before they plummeted. That's interesting to think about. Another convenient, huge success, or is that another one of them funding things? You don't think they're going to fund him directly, but these are the way the games are played. Now, while he seems to have interest in all those things that are alternative, particularly alternative science, he's a big UFO buff, fringe science, paranormal topics, the organization Research Cattle Mutilations, Black Triangle Reports, and all the things that are connected to extraterrestrials and secret government projects. But it's kind of a fallacy, because the organization that he founded, the National Institute for Discovery Science, only really functioned for 5 or 6 years and never really did much of anything and never released anything. And of course, as with all these organizations and pretty much everybody on the planet, you sign a non-disclosure agreement. So you can't talk about anything that's ever happened in the organization if it's come to you. So we really know nothing of this guy. Can't really find anybody who wants to talk about him. There is some basic information. Interesting enough, he funded Art Bell to get his show going, the alternative show that he sponsored for a year or so, and got everybody going. And Angela Thompson Smith worked for this organization at the time, and the only person I could find who's written a little snippet about him. She worked there for a couple of years as a secretary, which displeased her, because she was a psychic and wanted to be more involved in other things. But she was kept very alienated and away from most projects, it appears, and that's exactly what she didn't want to do. You certainly don't want to work as a secretary. I mean, you can get a secretary job anywhere, and working for something like that. So there was no mention. She worked in actually getting guests to go onto Art Bell's show. Well, and he sponsored it by paying for whatever it is to do all that. Which is interesting, because I followed Art Bell at the beginning. He was a political reporter, and I was on his show before it went big time. He used to, every Friday night, would have a paranormal night. But I won't go into that here. It's a different subject. But, I mean, this is clearly stated that he was involved with that. He worked with that a few years and then got bored of it and dropped away. Well, he didn't get bored of it. He did his job. He got it going. They wanted the show going into Art Bell's hands, which is a whole complicated issue of who he is and the trauma that went with him and the not trauma. I'm not sure what the fight there was with the public, but there's lots of staged and paid people to harass people like him, even though he did work for all the government people and had all those losers on, the Ed Dames, the John Alexander ex-militaries, and was doing a service for them getting all this garbage out there and put on a lot of very uncredible people. But where did all that money come from? Nothing seems to come from the private sector. So the point is that he put all that money into it for, I believe, a year or two and then dropped out. And then Art Bell conveniently, did he sell property like he did? Oh, no. He didn't do that. He started his own show after it was confirmed by that. But it was supposedly carried by a radio network. So I don't understand how all that works. But the point is that the whole thing was kicked off, and Angela Thompson Smith was a person who lined up guests consistently for this period of time, and there was really no problem. And when she left, when he claimed that he couldn't find decent guests there, some bogus reason, while he didn't want to be involved anymore, she already had guests lined up for another year. So, and there certainly is endless amounts of professional, well-spoken people that write books, etc. I mean, it's just endless. So all of that is important to understand. So this guy pulled out of that. He owns Skywalker Ranch, and that's not have anything to do with George Lucas or Star Wars. But this was a place that supposedly had all kinds of extraterrestrial and paranormal happenings on it. He purchased this ranch. The people there, he bought the ranch. They moved 15 miles away, which is interesting in general that they still stayed in the area. If they were so traumatized what was going on, but I don't know if his deal was good or not. But he bought the ranch, sent a bunch of people there, including our buddy and his pal, Pally. Hey, Pally. Colonel retired John Alexander. Yeah, the guy who lost the war on the ground in Vietnam, yeah. And then helped lose it in all the other wars. The usual government murderer who's involved in everything, who gets into everybody and is watching everything. And I guess all the whores, the parapsychologists, whores and losers and non-business people want to keep the military guy around because that's where the money is. Or they think it is, because it never really comes through, does it? At least not that the public knows about. So we have all this nonsense coming from these people, and he's tied with these people. He's not objective. He's not a maverick. He's nothing. He's working with NASA now to put some sort of inflatable hotels. He's been in the hotel business as well, owning budget hotels or something, long-term lodges, which is interesting because there really isn't that many of them. He owns 5 or 6 properties, certainly not a huge project for him. But of course, it's a nice cover. So the whole idea is that he's now doing this to put a hotel in space because that is, and at his age, it's amusing that he's interested in not doing research with all his money. He's 74 years old now. That he wants to put all this time in with NASA. And other government agencies to build this hotel in space. He's either one of the most boringest goofballs on the planet or so. It's so amusing when you look at these things. And being a businessman myself and a person involved in success technologies and alternative science and all those other things, the occult sciences, this all encompasses everything that makes any sense. I see what he does is ridiculous. But, I've watched a few interviews and other things with him. He's convinced that there's aliens on the planet, just like has been stated by many people, and this is the routine they want. The government wants people to believe this, to use them in whatever fashion they want. If they want good aliens, they'll say the good aliens are here. If they want bad aliens, they'll say the bad ones are here. So, this is the same story you get from these psychotic international controllers and their group of murdering law enforcement and military people. Because you step out of line, they take you out. So the whole idea is that this is plain and simple. This guy really has nothing else. So he's bought this ranch. He's been involved in other research. He had this institution. God knows what they're into, a whole bunch of things. But they're certainly not writing books about this. They're not talking about any breakthroughs. And as a private research organization, they're not beholden to anybody. He's made statements that he thinks the space program, which has been going on here, should go to private industry because there's no way that the government can keep up. Well, it's a good way to hide trillions of dollars, which is exactly what's going on. It's interesting the most unqualified people in the world are involved in the space program, including him. What does he know? I built apartments in Vegas. Yeah. And that qualifies him. Or let's go to Bezos, Mr. Amazon. I make movies. Yeah, I'm building space shuttles. And all the other idiots. Branson, yeah, I made me money from spinning records. Now we're going to go to the moon because I'm so bright. Yeah, right. Give me a scone. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So to think that these people have any way of putting together organizations other than signing the checks is absurd. This is specialty areas and how they can possibly get into these things. But we know darn well there's so many government assistants that are involved in this. The government's funding it anyway. It's ridiculous. They just now give control to people you can't walk into and say, well, what did you do with that money? They're not beholden to anybody. And of course, he supports this. He believes, like believing that aliens are actually here. Well, that's a breakthrough. Give us some more. And it's backed up with what, Mr. Bigelow? You've got all this money and research. You've got the Skywalker Ranch. Was Luke there? And what have you shown us of proof of this? Do you have photos? Specimens? What do you have, Mr. Bigelow? And I would like a cup of tea. We got nothing. No. Nothing. I can't produce anything. Ooh. So, the same old nonsense. And yet here's a guy who's 74 years old who wants to build inflatable tupos, balls floating in space that are inflatable for people to sit up there that obviously have nothing better to do. But we all know this is all about gaining technology and so forth and making somebody else pay for it because the government doesn't want to do it because it's too difficult. They want to take all the $17 trillion that are missing now and put it in their own pockets. I put that in research that helps them anyway. They'll figure out other ways of doing it. And this guy is one of their mouthpieces. Again, is he hooked up with any radicals, people who think different, who want to fight the system? Is he involved with anybody alternative? Russell Targ, Hal Puthoff, or should I say CIA agent Russell Targ, Hal Puthoff, Colonel Alexander, who's got his big fancy jobs that he's been paying hundreds of thousands of dollars a year from military contractors that he works for. And of course, working on and the joke is him being the head of non-lethal weapons, otherwise known as weapons to use against your own people when you do things publicly so it doesn't look like massacres. They'll get you in and murder you later. Well, we just don't want it in public. So he's working on weapons to use on his own people. None of these have ever been used in military situations outside of the United States, or if they had, they're only testing them so they can bring them back here. Because we can see the great effectiveness of all these weapons in the different battlegrounds that we're at right now. They're just so subdued by all these alternative weapons. Almost none of them have worked except for microwaves that fry your head and other things. And yes, these things will stop you from attacking, at least in a traditional manner. If you're working from the typical military reality, which is Fort Apache, build a fort and then try and hold a place that way. But the bottom line is the way wars are fought and the way they have been for tens of thousands of years is through inferior forces have always beat superior forces by their primitive functioning. Hide in the mountains, run down in your bathrobes and sandals and take on those real sophisticated people who you just blow away. So the whole idea is that when we talk about these things of what this guy is and what he's doing, we really can't get anything from him since he really doesn't care about anybody else. He's beholden to the actual military, and of course, since it's his money, he's beholden to nobody. So all of this adds up to the point that this guy is just another one of these things. And it's sad that, we can't find any people who want to invest in this, even though apparently in the 80s and so forth, the Rockefeller Foundation did give money to psychic research, to Princeton, etc., to do some of this. So there are some of this. In the 70s, apparently R.J. Rentals, the aluminum foil magnate, also was sponsoring Andrew Pisharek and other ones. And of course, he was similar to Bigelow in the fact that he had private money and this was an interest to his, and he put his money into it. But at least we got something out of that. None of that, at least to some minor degrees. But we get absolutely nothing out of this guy. There's absolutely nothing that he has released. Whatever information he has on extraterrestrials, he has proven absolutely nothing and brought absolutely nothing. He does seem to sponsor some alternative people here and there. Apparently Dr. Dean Radin, was connected to him for a period of time. He has some, quote, labs, or have had, at the University of Nevada that he has sponsored. But none of this seems to be continuing to go on, nor does there seem to be much support there. People that have worked for him have not made good money. Certainly, what has been reported from the one source that I can tell, which is Angela Thompson Smith, she was paid mediocrely. She never had any decent money, and certainly didn't have any decent money working for him, and certainly didn't think a second about leaving that organization because of her minor role, because of money. When she always needed, you think she would have hung around if she was really paid. So it doesn't seem like he pays very many people very well. What he sets up, what money he gets, is like everything else. The beggar parapsychologists, these corrupt people that can't figure out basic business strategies so they can finance their own labs because they don't really produce anything. And this is a serious problem. So they get in bed with the worst possible people, and then they wonder why they have problems. It's like being financed by organized crime. The money's good, it's easy to get, a lot of strings attached, and when the shit hits the fan, well, everybody could have told you it's not a good idea to be getting loans from or working with organized crime. It just don't add up too well. So this is what happened with all these people, and they keep working with people like this. Now, the problem with being really rich is that you are not independent as much as people think you are. You're connected to all sorts of streams of money that you are scared shitless of losing, because that means you can't pay for your 10 Rolls Royces. I mean, that's how bad it is. These people don't sit back and finance individuals, send them money, etc. And if anything is going on, we just don't know. This is one of the problems with a lot of people who want to keep this type of thing secret as well. People who even donate to regular causes. It has been said that Steve Jobs was a person who did donate, even though he's got a reputation of not. But he never talked about it. Well, why is that? Why not talk about what you're doing and helping to be a model, a role model? So I don't believe any of that. So what this person's done, how has he done things, how he's helped? Well, he's in bed with the government on every single level. He's in bed with all the CIA agents and everyone else. I mean, it's really frightening of what's going on in these areas where the control never ends. But he's certainly not independent. He doesn't even come off very intelligent to me. I mean, this is basically a construction company guy from Las Vegas, Nevada, who's had minimal education, was able to prosper during a boom. How he did that, I have no idea. How he got all those bank loans, ooh boy, sounds a lot like Tesla Motor Company to me. And his brother, who was involved in all the banking industries. Well, yeah, but excuse me, he did it all himself. He financed it by working, doing part-time jobs, helping to pay off his loans. So the whole idea is that this kind of stuff goes on and on. So it's really unfortunate. It's really unfortunate that I can't sit here and give a list of people other than R.J. Reynolds, again, who poorly financed people as well. He worked with Andrei Pisharek and other people, but he wasn't pouring huge amounts of money. He allowed him to live at some place, and there wasn't proper contracts when he finally died in the 80s or whatever it was. Andrei Pisharek and his small team there were left as hobos and bums on his property and then were evicted. So this is the kind of thing that happens, and here we go again. They don't take care of any of these things, and it's almost like it's planned. Certainly, Bigelow has done absolutely nothing to assist in this area other than play. And I think that it is, I think he was brought into the play by other people that filtered all sorts of information and money so they could have him do research that if he got caught, nobody cares and it's private and doesn't have to be discussed. But if you get caught in the government, there are certain factors that happen there that you have to be accountable, even though to some degree, of course, they just lie and cheat, same old story. But it does leave openings. Why do that when you can get a stooge to do the work for you? So absolutely nothing has come from this guy. He hasn't done anything. He hasn't set up institutes of research where people can come to, libraries, data banks, set up labs where people can come into and do works. All the things that I would do if I had a fortune and bring people in and just for the fun of it. It's just as exciting to get into alternative technologies and different abilities. Why not do that? None of this seemed to happen. Of course, we don't really know what they were doing, but I tend to think everything points to he was assisting governmental people because that's all he's involved with. It's the same old stories. It's the same lineup of people, the SRI people, the whores there, General Alexander. The list goes on of these 10 or 50. And of course, let's not forget all the remote viewers, or should I say ex-military liars, otherwise known as remote viewers. So here we go again with the same old nonsense. But, people should be aware of this person and their activities if you want to be an educated, manifesting scientist. So remember, everybody, there is no reality until the manifesting scientist creates it. Until next time.